We got some fast-moving developments in the Abrego Garcia case with two competing filings, one by the Trump administration, who wants to tell the judge to dismiss the entire case. There's nothing to see here. They brought Abrego Garcia back. It took 90 days. Sure, they disregarded every order of the United States Supreme Court and Judge Xinis, but they finally brought him back to face charges on a case, a criminal case they developed while they were under the orders of the court and were being found in contempt. Judge Xinis is going to have to see through, I believe, what was just filed by the Trump administration, what was just filed by the Abrego Garcia lawyers. I'm going to synthesize it, put it all together right here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF, where I do all my work at the intersection of law and politics from my vantage point as a 35-year vintaged trial lawyer. Okay. Judge Xinis has complete control over her courtroom and the administration of justice related to Armando Abrego Garcia. That was the gentleman who was taken off the streets of Maryland by ICE and removed to El Salvador over an order of an immigration judge in the States that said that couldn't happen. Knowing that he was subject to an order, they put him on a plane with 200 other men, and sent him to El Salvador and away, this is the important part, from federal jurisdiction, so they thought, and from federal court oversight, so they thought. The wife of Abrego Garcia, a U.S. citizen, mother of his two children, also U.S. citizens, went, just as she's as expected to do, she went and hired a very good law firm, a series of them, including Quinn Emanuel, who used to represent Donald Trump, and sued the government in Maryland, where they live. Judge Xinis assigned. Judge Xinis rules that Donald Trump needs to facilitate the return or his administration of Abrego Garcia. She issued that order back in April the 10th. The Supreme Court sided with her 9-0. Even the right-wing MAGA Trumpers went with the majority 9-0, right? Complete unanimous decision. You think Donald Trump would work to go pick him back up the next day, put him on a charter flight, pick him back up? No. They started stonewalling, attacking, taunting, and the rest. We then move forward. She has a hearing. Okay, I was affirmed. You need to tell me every day at 5 o'clock what you're doing to facilitate. They refuse to do it. Pound sand. I'm not telling you. We're only telling you the basics, and not even that. Claiming state secrets. And now we're in June. And finally, after filing an indictment on the 21st of May, while they have been flouting the orders of the court since April, and then say, well, we brought him back. Yeah, well, you didn't bring him back to Maryland, and you didn't bring him back to Judge Xinis, and you didn't bring him back to be given the due process habeas corpus rights before he left, before you sent him out again. So their position is, well, first we're going to convict him in Tennessee, and then we'll deport him because he's a convicted felon, and we can deport him. But the judge wants to hear from the parties. First, Trump filed a motion to dissolve the injunction and to get out from under any contempt proceedings, because that's what's going on right now. That's what they were facing. Last Thursday, the day before they brought him back or so, Judge Xinis already ruled that the other side can file their motion for contempt. She's ready. Discovery's done, and she thinks she's been played with. She thinks she's been disrespected, and I think the Trump administration obviously knew that she was about to rule against them, and suddenly brought him back on the phony indictment. It wasn't even. I'm going to read to you from the papers of Abrego Garcia's lawyers first about how we got here. I think it summarizes it so well. It's on page 1. Though Kilmer Armando Abrego Garcia is at long last back in the United States following his illegal removal, to characterize the government as having complied with the court's order is pure farce. The government flouted rather than followed the orders of this court and of the United States Supreme Court. Instead of facilitating Abrego Garcia's return for the past 2 months, defendants have engaged in an elaborate all-of-government effort to defy court orders, deny due process, and disparage Abrego Garcia. In its latest act of contempt, the government arranged for Abrego Garcia's return not to Maryland in compliance with the Supreme Court's directive to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been removed, but rather to Tennessee so that he could be charged with a crime in a case that the government only developed while it was under threat of sanctions. yeah, that is appropriate right now to be calling out the stonewalling and go pound sand position of the Trump administration. They then go into the phoniness of it all on page 2. Over the past 2 months, they say, the executive branch has acted not just in contempt of multiple court orders, but with open defiance towards its co-equal branch of government, the judiciary. The various highest officials in the administration have publicly stated that they will follow orders of the Supreme Court in contrast to valid lower court orders, and even that they would refuse to tell a judge about their directly relevant discussions with foreign officials. The dichotomy between the lip service government lawyers have paid to the court about supposed efforts to comply and the hostility and intransigence displayed by the White House and cabinet members has been stark and chilling. 2 things are now crystal clear. First, the government has always had the ability to return Abrego Garcia, but it refused to do so. Second, the government has conducted a determined stall campaign to stave off contempt sanctions long enough to concoct a politically face-saving exit from its own predicament. They also point out that there were no extradition proceedings that went on in El Salvador. All they apparently did was wave around the arrest warrant, and that was enough for El Salvador to say, sure, you can have him back, which only puts a lie to the proposition proposed by the Trump administration, which is we had no control over him. Look how easily they were able to pop him out when they needed to. Therefore, they are objecting to the stay. We now have the second piece of paper, Trump's reply. Here's what Trump has to say to that. First, it's the same argument they raised last time. Judge, nothing to see here. You told us to bring him back. We finally brought him back 90 days later. He's in Tennessee facing criminal charges. All better now? And they just sort of repeat that argument. And then their substantive attack on what was just filed by Abrego Garcia goes something like this on the bottom of page 2. Plaintiff's response to this development is desperate and disappointing. In the face of Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S., they baselessly accuse defendants of foot dragging and intentionally disregarding the court's orders, which is the opposite of true. I follow this case pretty closely. That is exactly what they've been doing. Plaintiffs also argue that post-compliance discovery into defendants' compliance with the injunction is still appropriate, but there's no legal basis for it. We've had some disagreements, but at the end of the day, we returned Abrego. We're back to the circular logic. We returned him, so you should drop the injunction because we returned him. Yeah. The judge has continuing inherent authority to administer justice in her courtroom. Part of that is to enforce. It would be judicial malpractice to enforce the orders of the U.S. Supreme Court 9-0 about the habeas corpus rights of Abrego Garcia, and not just Abrego Garcia, people not named Abrego Garcia. That's what this case matters about. And so you have that. Yeah, you have this issue now in front of Judge Xinis for final determination. It does not obviate or ameliorate in any way the contumacious conduct, the breach of the judge's order time and time again before they brought home Abrego Garcia. They were at least in contempt for 90 days. That's a pretty long period of contempt. And the judge has to exert her power and has to enforce the orders of the Supreme Court. Or what are we doing here? She doesn't enforce her own orders, or she doesn't enforce the orders of her boss, or the Fourth Circuit that also ruled twice in her favor. What is she supposed to do? So the answer to these immortal questions being asked is, does the judge still have jurisdiction over contempt, even if changed circumstances lead to the injunction that she issued being vacated? Will she vacate the injunction now because he's back? I'm not sure about that. The injunction says facilitate his release in order for him to get habeas corpus rights here in the States about his departure. Half of it's true. They got him out. They brought him out, demonstrating they had the ability all the time to bring him back, which only proves the contempt. And they haven't brought him back to Maryland. So I think it's less than 50-50 on the injunction that it gets vacated, but the underlying conduct up until that moment when they brought him back and still is a part of the contempt call. She can do it. The judge can do it by her inherent authority. And she's also asked the other side, led by Quinn Emanuel, great firm representing Abrego Garcia, to file a motion for contempt, which is coming. And this is the fight to try to stop that. It's not going to get stopped. It's not going to get stayed. Judge Xinis is going to find that the Trump administration and all of its personnel in the Department of Justice is in contempt of court. I'm confident of that. Could be. I think it'll likely be civil contempt. It'll be the second judge in that region. Jeb Boasberg being the first judge who found probable cause for criminal contempt against the Trump administration on immigration policy. And Judge Xinis now, I think, any day now. If it's not the end of this week, she works on the weekends. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And we'll report on it right here on the MeidasTouch Network. Many ways to support us. One good way, you can go over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and hit the free subscribe button. That's one. Two, we got a Legal AF podcast for the last 5 years, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time here on the MeidasTouch Network. But we need more audio downloads and more rankings and ratings and reviews. That's how this thing works. We are the #1 YouTube podcast, the video version. We are the #1 law and politics YouTube podcast and weekly rankings. But we need more help over here on the other side when it comes to the audio side. And then I've got a brand new podcast called The Intersection, Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time here on the MeidasTouch Network. And then we also have our audio feed that we're just building, getting in on the ground floor of. And we post there almost every day new episodes of The Intersection. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.